Happy to be here. Yeah, we've run the Impactful for 6 or 7 years, and it's part community for people working in areas of social impact. So we have a lot of creatives, designers, marketers, specialists, and we all collaborate on projects to support businesses. So we can tap into our talent pool to work with a whole host of organizations on lots of different topics. So yeah, it's been a good journey, not without ups and downs, of course.
So it's a lot of marketing, and do you also do social media marketing projects, or is it always part of a bigger picture?
Definitely. Yeah. And it's always been, when we try to work with organizations that do good work, sometimes we're helping amplify their message. Sometimes we're helping them spread their message, start their message. So yeah, a lot of marketing, PR, and comms that, of course, social media plays a significant role in.
Right. Can you tell me a bit about the type of companies that you work with?
Yeah, it's really been, we've worked with large tech companies, and obviously sometimes we don't really touch their social media when they have tens of millions of followers, but then all the way down to climate startups, nonprofits. We have a regenerative ocean farm client that they get a ton of press and have been featured in numerous documentaries. So sometimes it's helping them craft a consistent brand or some consistent messaging that then, of course, makes its way to social impact. So it's been nonprofits, it's been startups, it's been small businesses and large businesses across a whole host of industries too.
What type of company do you prefer working with?
We have 200 members in our community around the world, and folks have worked with all kinds of organizations. I think where we find a sweet spot is usually an organization that is doing good work. Maybe they work in education, maybe they work in climate or sustainability, and they're somewhat small or early in their journey. I think we do really well working with that type of organization because I think they're not set in their ways. They need all hands on deck kind of help. And then our, no overhead community model really suits their needs. So we can, as folks listening know, things change so quickly, and especially when you're a smaller or newer organization, then we can pull in marketing or comms or PR or social help as they need it to. So that's definitely been a sweet spot for us, those smaller, newer organizations doing important stuff.
Mm-hmm. So when you do social media for yourself, for the Impactful, for clients, do you have a different approach for everything?
Yeah, it's definitely a different approach. I think one thing that we've had this really cool benefit of, because we have this community, a lot in the community have worked at big agencies or big companies, or they themselves are founders and have started their own marketing or PR or comms or social agencies or do consulting work. And so we kind of get both ends of the spectrum. We see and have folks who have worked with big brands that have huge budgets that they're spending, and there's a strategy there. And then we also have to be flexible and nimble and leverage, organic media as much as we can and organic opportunities. And so there's definitely a different approach. I think also within that, different goals for organizations. I think and that's where we really try and refine it. And I think that helps the individuals, the solopreneurs as well. So what's a goal? Can we stick to a channel or a strategy long enough to actually see some results, right? And I think that's part of, I'm sure, as your audience knows, hard with social media is how do you consistently create a program, a content strategy, stick with it enough to then also say, are we able to see some ROI? Are we able to see some return? But you also need to have a clear sense of what that return or what that goal should be. And that's very different compared to everybody. Some it could be establishing a presence. Some it could be finding new customers. Some it could be avoiding political backlash. I mean, you have this whole host of goals. Then we say, okay, if we execute on this strategy for this period of time, did we get enough signal through all the noise to effectively say, did this help? Did this reach? And I think that's something that both small and large organizations and teams and individuals struggle with is, I'm on this platform. I feel I should be on this platform, or we're already on this platform. Is it correct? Is it a right fit for us? Is it following trends, or is this authentic to our brand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. And what channels are you using at this moment for yourself?
I am a great example of not sticking to a platform long enough, as you and I have known each other for a while. I like to change. Thankfully, I didn't put all my chips into Clubhouse, because rest in peace, Clubhouse. Right now, LinkedIn. Right now, also sometimes on Medium. I've liked some of the kind of blogging social media channels, and I think we're reviving an old Substack. I think I got off of Twitter, which when Elon kind of went haywire there, and there's a lot in the social impact space from Blue Sky. But I haven't really invested much in Blue Sky. So I think social channels are LinkedIn, and then some of the Substack mediums, as well as kind of our own blog, if that counts.
Yeah. And is that for the impactful as well?
Yeah, it's pretty much both. And since I'm a big chunk of the team, I think it's kind of synonymous, but it brings up a point that I think a lot of our community and founders and folks working with brands struggle with too, is the self versus the brand and the interplay between the two. Is it the same? Is it different? And I think, both the blessing and the curse is there are so many examples where you have different ways of doing that has worked successfully for people, where I think a prime example is, people often say Richard Branson is the Virgin brand. It's hard to separate. And you look at, I know he's quite unpopular now, but Elon is his own brand, even though he has Tesla and X and SpaceX. So there are different approaches that work quite well. So yeah, for me right now, it's basically pretty synonymous. Me and the impactful are pretty much in the same couple channels.
Mm-hmm. And what is your experience with social media in general?
Oh, yeah. I think you could plant me firmly in the love-hate category. There are times where I have gone down rabbit holes and wasted too much time yelling in the void. You got to have, the burner account that need that outlet or need that release, or wasting too much time getting into political arguments. So I've seen that, gone down those rabbit holes. And then at the same time, I think I've seen the absolute benefit from it. I mean, probably you and I, in our relationship in some ways, and being able to connect with people all around the world, there are incredible benefits to it. So I think if anything, my university got Facebook as one of the first groups. That was 2006. And so it's almost been 20 years of social media. And I think some of us are feeling that weight and that effect, of course, in addition to, all the negative aspects. So very much love hate. And I think it just taught me to try to be intentional about social media use, try to set some clear goals to fight the lure and some of the addictive nature of it.
So in other words, you were one of the first Facebook users.
It's a badge that I wear with honor, unbeknownst to me. Yeah, I mean, 2006, we had Facebook, and you had to have an EDU email address. And I remember sitting in a college room, the dorm room. This is how old I am. And my roommate and I were like, "Whoa, we can post pictures on here," and we would upload pictures from our digital camera to the void. And it was and I connected with someone in another class, and we met up to study. I mean, those were early exciting days of social media.
Yeah, and then it could have gone another direction, let's say, back then.
Yes, we had a story. Our university, the softball team got in legal trouble for hazing based on pictures that they posted on social media. And at that time, that was so crazy to us, because it was wait a minute, this stuff can reach the real world? We just thought it was these closed social networks. And all of a sudden somebody got in trouble. It kind of flipped your whole mindset of, oh yeah, wait a minute, this stuff exists online and in some database, or is accessible when need to be. So that was pretty jarring at the time. Little did we know.
Yeah, and interesting that you mentioned this. I think it's something that I feel very strong about personally. A lot of people still don't seem to notice that anything you put on social media is stored there forever. And I'm in a very, as I said, I have a strong opinion about this. I would never post pictures of my kids online. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's I think at its core, I feel a lot of that same tension and challenge. I mean, I think in a lot of stories coming out with the dangers of AI and AI's ability to take an image of your kid and do some real harm and real damage with it. Yeah, I think it's been this evolution of what feels appropriate, what feels right, and what is the risk benefit. And the hard part is we really don't know, right? I mean, I think like if you're the concept of a get file, like what does a company have on you in terms of data and information? Like we really have no clue. But at the same time, trying to break up with Google or break up with some of these platforms almost feels at times impossible, even though it's not. It can feel impossible. So it's this tension of, how do I show up? I want to be connected and have some benefits, but we all have to be way more mindful of the data and the insights and what we're putting out there almost unknowingly. And I think now with AI, the ability for something to be spread harmfully is exponentially greater. My wife posts pictures of our kids, but it's to a closed group on Instagram, which I think, okay, fine, but you still have that question, who's on the other end? What about the data on the servers and that information? And the reality is like, we kind of don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned the benefits and the risks that are involved. I'm really wondering, what are the benefits of posting one's own pictures or pictures of your kids online?
Yeah, it's a great question, Keel. I think the few benefits I can see is, for example, she passed away last year, but my wife's grandma was on Facebook, and her grandkids specifically got her on Instagram so she could be added to a few small groups. So if you looked at the grandmother's Instagram, she followed 6 people, and she got a curated content of her grandkids, and her great grandkids. So that was a use case. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, we would love for her to see pictures, and it was easier for her to log in and see a place. I think there are those core use cases that are genuine. The problem is everything that comes with that, and it ends up, I think, being a net negative in a lot of ways. So that maybe that core access of sharing privately a few things with family and friends and closed group, as best you can think it's a closed group, I can see those benefits.
Yeah, that makes sense. I personally still don't think it adds up to the risks, but whatever.
No. To your point is we don't fully know the risks, and that's the dangerous part, right? What happens if some Google engineer or Meta engineer downloaded data and shared it or gave it to AI? I mean, things can be off to the races. So I know the argument is usually, well, that would be detrimental to their business model, blah, 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 but there's still that risk. And so, yeah.
And by the time you find out, it's so many weeks or months later, and I mean, too big to fail in that aspect as well, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, maybe move on to something positive. What has been your best experience with social media so far?
I think that my best experience has been pretty much when it moves into the real world. So meeting people, making new connections. For instance, we've had people join our impactful community that they have definitely found out about it in some social channel or a blog post that references somebody else. And then we meet in real life and we establish relationships and get to know each other. So I think the connections between using the digital platforms, which I think is important, remembering that there are means to authentic real life communication, that's when it's been really beneficial and has been helpful. It's led to finding clients, it's led to finding work, but not without costs as well.
Can you think of any, like, one particular standout moment of something that happened on social media?
Yeah, I'll give a good negative one. There was ESPN, like the US new sports channel, ESPN. There was a sports anchor that had some absurd comment. This was years ago on the nightly national broadcast in the US. And I tweeted at him and told him how ridiculous and absurd and not nice words he was, and he retweeted me and said, "This is the dumbest thing I've heard all year." It was my tweet, and he had hundreds of thousands of followers, and his trolls unleashed on me. I mean, I'm not an influencer, nowhere close, but it did give me a small snippet of, oh my God, the negative side of trolling and audiences. I mean, they came after me, and I think the picture was of when I gave a TED Talk and I had that little microphone, and some guy was like, look at him with this fake TED Talk microphone. And I was like, no, it's actually a real one. That is a TED Talk microphone, TEDx, you know. So, that one was pretty good of like, wow. I mean, it made me, though, think of young females, young individuals online. My God, I can imagine if you have a large following, just the sheer nonsense and inappropriate stuff you get messaged. That was my negative snippet.
Wow. Oh yeah, it's crazy how much influence someone can have, and how much they can damage someone's life if they're not emotionally stable.
Yes, and it reminded you the amplifier effect, both good and bad. I think positive stories would just be maybe when there's been a few influential climate folks who have retweeted or posted or reshared something that we've done. And, actually early, and I'm happy to talk more about this, but early in my career, I worked for a wildlife conservation org that did documentaries and commercials and public service announcements with celebrities, primarily celebrities working in Asian markets. So Leonardo DiCaprio, Richard Branson, Yao Ming, Jackie Chan. And the value of them tweeting or sharing on social about wildlife conservation, I mean, it was hard to argue with the stats on the number of people who saw or engaged or gave positive feedback. So, those were some nice stories of it as well.
Okay, nice. Do you have any example of like maybe the funniest moment you've ever had on social media?
Oh, the funniest moment I've ever had on social media. Funny and hopefully appropriate. Getting called, I mean, as it was damaging, but getting called out was, and having trolls was kind of funny. What else would be another funny moment? Right before we had our first child, I did an open mic stand-up bit. That was my kind of like freak out about becoming a father. I was like, you know what I should do right now? I should start my comedy career 3 weeks before, but I think it was like just needed to check the box. And so I dragged my very pregnant wife to an open mic stand-up routine, and a few of those clips got shared by some people on social media. And so that was like, again, bridging this, me on a microphone doing a 5-minute bit with the real world and people sharing it. So those have long been since deleted, so don't even try and find them online.
Damn it.
Yeah, they're gone.
And maybe any like just funny moments that you remember, maybe not of you involved, but like the best, the most funny social media moment of all times.
Oh yeah. Where to begin in terms of stuff I've seen on social media? I mean, as an American, the attacks on Trump and the political commentary on Trump is just hysterical. Jon Stewart, I'm a huge fan of him and what he does and his political commentary. I know, why am I blank? It's like there's so many things I can't think of what's been the most funny on social media. Jon Stewart Daily Show has been really hysterical for me. I'm a huge fan of the old show Modern Family and Phil Dunphy, who's the dad, and any social media that shares clips of him. He is deep in my YouTube algorithm. So I just like hope to emulate Phil Dunphy from Modern Family as a father. That always gets me. Yeah, I don't know. You want more specific examples?
Yeah, maybe it's hard to think of them right just on the spot.
Yeah, I know. Now you're making me think of like what is the funniest thing I've seen on social media. There's like too many. I've sent a gazillion YouTube and Instagram links, so I don't know. Oh, I have one. I have a good example. There's these Australian guys on Instagram, the Inspired Unemployed or something to that effect. And they do these funny bits. And they did one where they pretended to work at a grocery store. And they were at the checkout counter. And an old lady comes up and she's checking out her groceries. And the guy says, "What is this?" And she goes, "That's a potato." And he goes, "No, it's not." And they do this like 10-minute bit where they keep calling their friends out from the back. Have you seen this?
Yeah,
It's like, what is it? It's like, that's not a potato. And they're looking, and then they get so excited when they figure out it's a potato, and they start hugging and kissing and putting each other on their shoulders. That was good. The grandma's like, what the are you guys doing?
Yeah. I remember that one. I saw that one as well, and it made me check out their account and the rest of our videos, which weren't as good as this one, but yeah, that one was pretty funny.
They had a few highlights. Yeah.
Any crazy stories that you could think of? Can go in any directions.
Any crazy stories that pertain to social media? I mean, yeah, I mean, again, not to get political, but as an American, I mean, we've had some crazy social media stories with arguing with ourselves. I mean, there was this time not that long ago where it was myself, my brother, and a family member. We all share the same last name, and we're all arguing on Facebook together about politics. And everybody was like, "Who are all these Weismen yelling at each other?" Nobody knew who was on whose team. And so I think when you start, like, there was 2 versus 1, and then another one chimed in. I think everybody watching who knew some of us, but not all of us, was like, what the hell are you people doing? So I think there's these crazy stories of, when you're typing at your computer and you're so focused, and then you realize, you zoom back and you realize, oh, this is making the rounds. People are seeing this. This, to your point, lives on. I think it sort of helped reshape etiquette, and also the importance of setting some some guide rails. And for me, goal setting was, I don't really think Facebook is helping my personal or professional goals, so I deleted my account and don't have it. And that was to then, okay, well, now that I'm freed up from that, maybe I can use LinkedIn more intentionally, or maybe I can use another tool, not to replace the itch, but to be a little bit more strategic about it. So yes, arguing with your family in a public forum that everyone can see is a little crazy. And then it makes you realize maybe you should reel it in.
Yeah, that's quite funny. If you were in Elon's shoes, let's say you're in Elon's shoes, what would you change about social media?
I actually think, and this is a call to action for anyone who wants to make something, I think turning off the feeds and the algorithms, and I would imagine with some of these AI tools, it'd be pretty powerful, would be huge. I think there's a real desire to, especially maybe for some of us who have been on it for a long time, or younger generations, or people who are tired, just like Instagram, for example. And it's almost how it started. If you had 10 people that you followed and you could turn off the explore nonsense, then okay, this is a curated sort of private network. I think the business models support views and eyeballs and engagement, and not always serving our best interest. And so if I could create a platform that let you toggle that on and off, turn off a feed, make it close, somehow be more private. And I know some have tried this in a sense, but it's almost like, hey, take some of my LinkedIn data through an API, take some of my Instagram data through an API, and privately create this little closed ecosystem for me to gain insights for work and connect with the right people. I think that would be really cool, and still serve a value, still serve a purpose of, it's not an easy thing to try and crack, but how do you balance the benefits of connecting with people around the world and turn off some of the negative components to it?
Yeah, because like social media, the name has this value of connection, being social, but as we move in time, it's getting less and less social. And how many users are never interacting? They're just
Yeah,
they
right.
turn into zombies, and they watch the feed, and maybe they like something, but they'll never send a message. They'll never connect with anyone. Like my wife, she'll watch TikTok. She'll never send a message to anyone. She watches Instagram. Maybe she'll send a message to me, which in some way helps connect. But they're not really establishing new connections.
Yeah, right. And the importance of actually building quality over quantity, I think, is really important on social media. How can you use social media to build quality relationships, not just quantity? We still prioritize how many followers you have because we think that leads to more revenue, more impact, more whatever. And I think there's some cases where that's true, and there's other cases where it's not. It's led to depression and anxiety, and you've seen a lot of influencers say, I'm out. I can't handle this, right? But I think the other thing that's interesting is, you and I saw almost firsthand the demise of Twitter. There was a time period where Twitter was a pretty powerful tool. We may have even met there.
Mm-hmm.
And then people built audiences on Twitter, and you watched people who had spent a lot of time and energy building audiences. That was gone. And then you saw this, still there's a pervasive, a pretty loud voice that says email is powerful because those are your contacts. When you think about it from the business and audience building, there is still that risk that the tool or platform goes away. I mean, we can list all of the social media platforms that have disappeared. So I think there is that balance of how do you use social media with some goals, but remember, this is not your existence, and there is still a lot of risk, privacy risk, but also audience risk. Can you move some of those followers to email addresses and to other ways where you have a little bit more ownership of that? I think that helps de-risk the volatility in some of these platforms. The other example you give of your wife drives me crazy is we seem to be missing that we're all still humans, and there's only so many hours in the day. I don't understand there's a content saturation point. There's X number of people on Earth, and they're can only watch a screen for Y number of hours. Why are the businesses and the big Metas and Facebooks don't seem to be concerned about this? They think we would just consume more and more and more. The COVID pandemic is a good example. A lot of those big, primarily US-based media companies struggled because they thought this was a realistic view of how much people were willing to and wanting to consume. It's like, no. We were just stuck at home, so we watched all these shows. Second, we're still humans. We want to go outside. We want to see the sun. We want to play with each other. And so there's that tension of businesses, their business model with what we need and want, and how do you balance that? And I think the best thing that's been helpful for me in our community is know you're always fighting against something. So it's almost like, no, you're not going to get me. I know you're trying. Then I think you're free to try to use it a little bit more intentionally and thoughtfully, and then put it down and go outside and move those relationships. Okay, hey, the number of times I tell somebody on LinkedIn, send me an email, it's pretty much 90% of the time, because I want to pull that relationship out of LinkedIn. I don't want it dependent on another platform.
Yeah, that's also the thing I thought about recently. Even if I don't have your email, and LinkedIn disappears tomorrow, and X disappears, and I have no way to get in touch with you, I know that if the day after tomorrow there's this new platform called Y, and you're on Y, I can find you and we'll be friends again. And I think that's the type of connections that you need to establish. Everyone that was someday on Twitter and that's stopped using Twitter or X, and then moved to LinkedIn, and then suddenly maybe sometimes it's been a year, and oh, I remember, and I had a solid kind of relationship with that person on Twitter. I'll send them a connection request again, and then we can reestablish that connection, no questions asked, because we already had this sort of connection going on.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right to point out that the platforms evolve. I mean, again, what's the list of, Path and Vine and Clubhouse and basically Twitter that have come and gone, that we've all spent, MySpace. You could just go down the list to say what actually, at the end of the day, whether it's for your business, your client, yourself, matters is ultimately those relationships. You have some balloons, and so it's basically,
I do. I have them all the time. I can't turn them off.
I hope that gets shown. That's great. You're like, that was a nice comment, Zach. Here are some balloons.
I don't trigger them, hey, please, thumbs up, nothing. But then, boom.
What if I hold it? Does this look like, can you just impose a balloon here? Yeah, but I don't even know what you're talking about. But your balloons distracted me. But yeah, I mean, it's a balance, right? Oh, here's the example. Ask somebody, be like, if you had all of your LinkedIn followers, your Facebook friends, your Twitter followers in a field, how would you feel? How would you react? What if they were all standing there? Everybody you ever met online or had some sort of connection with, could you go through and be like, oh yeah, I remember you? Or would you have no idea? And it's a nice way to visually remember that for the most part, aside from the bots and the AI, there's a human on the other end of that relationship, of that connection. And that's ultimately what I think matters. Social media is a way to access more people and get your message out, but we should sort of keep in mind that there are human relationships. And I think anytime a brand or business or person presents themselves authentically, presents themselves genuinely on social media, I think we are now attuned. We can see that, and it resonates with people.
Yeah. One or two more questions before we wrap up. What would be your advice for people, for founders, impact founders that want to use social media more actively?
That's a great question. I would say two things and learn from my mistakes. One is consistency. I think sometimes as a business owner, a founder, starting out, running your own consultancy, whatever it may be, consistency is hard because I can, and I've done this. I could say, sign up for our weekly newsletter. And 3 weeks go by and there's nobody tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, Zach, like you haven't posted in 3 weeks. I thought this was a weekly newsletter. And so setting realistic expectations for yourself, saying, let's start the commitment low, once a month, once every 2 weeks, whatever, and trying to stick with it to create that habit and to create that authenticity, and then to get data. And I think that's the other thing, is to say, I'm going to try. We have so much FOMO with these things that I'm going to pick 2 or 3 channels, and I'm going to start here with a goal in mind to see if I can stick with it for my own intensive purposes and enough to get some data. So what that could look like is posting once a week on LinkedIn for 6 months, but you have to have a goal in mind in the beginning. Is it to get 300 followers on your corporate page? Is it to get 1 client? To then say, after 6 months of doing some consistent action, here's the ROI. Did it actually help, or did I just end up yelling at people about politics or whatever, right? Like, that's not a good ROI. So setting clear goals, testing long enough, and limiting yourself, saying, I'm a human, I'm a founder, I'm a business owner, I have lots of responsibilities. I can't be everywhere, nor should I be everywhere. Once you sort of view that switch of like omnipresence is kind of the detriment to good, and say, I'm going to pick a few channels and really dedicate to this, enough to at least get a strategy. I think like all these tools that can really help, that's great. Then you have a strategy and you're using those intentionally to help amplify.
Yeah. And I think that's something we should never forget, that social media is just a means to an end. When you start chasing the followers and going all in on social media, you're probably setting the wrong goal for yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think if you're starting out, or you have an agency, or you're a founder, or a consultant, whatever, say, do you have a client is your business set up on getting a lot of people to pay you a little amount, or is your business set up on getting a few people to pay you a lot of money? Then I think you should craft a strategy that supports that. If you have a $5 course and you want that to be your business model, okay, then you need volume, you need reach, which I think speaks to showing up on more platforms more frequently, creating a consistent funnel, tracking metrics, etc. And I've known plenty, and we have some in the Impactful who have founders or business owners who've been doing it for 15, 20 years, have 0 social media presence, get 5 clients a year, and that's all they need, because each client pays them $25,000, right? And so keeping in mind what's your ideal business model and what your actual goals are with your work can help inform strategy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else that I didn't ask about social media, but that you would like to share?
These were great questions, Keel. Thank you. I just think it's the only other thing is that I think for all of us, it's a journey, right? And we get excited by the dopamine hits. And then again, remembering that there's more to that. There's relationships to build. And I think, just the conversations like this that you guys are having and highlighting and helping build tools that make it more authentic and make it real really is important, and those of us appreciate it. And if anyone listening builds that app idea, just let me know. I can't fund it, but I'll help promote it.
Yeah. Me too.
And I'll use it. Yeah, we'll be your first users. Yeah.
Yeah. Just let us know.
Mhm.
Great. Before I forget, if anyone wants to reach out to you, is that an email, or can they find you on social media?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm just Zach Weismann on LinkedIn. Was it like linkedin.com/in/Zach Weismann? And then, yeah, email. I'm at zach@theimpactful.com, ZACH. You can always reach out to me on either of those channels. And if you find my burner account on Twitter, no, I'm just kidding. Don't message it. It's not me. And I take no responsibility for those tweets.
Is it also Zaki something?
No, but actually, do we have time for one more funny story? You finally made me remember. I don't know if it's popular in Europe, but in the US, there was like, I think it was called Neighborhood or Neighbor, some app where you could connect with your neighbors by your zip code. It's just one of those where people just yell at each other into the void about like, your dog pooped on my lawn and your fence is too high. And so there was some stuff going on in our neighborhood. So I made up an alias, and I used, a nondescript email address, and I was in there and I was just chatting away. And let's say on the platform, my name was, Jon Snow. I kept getting these notifications like Jon Snow. And I was like, who is this Jon Snow guy? And it was me, but I forgot my own alter ego. So I was like, God, why they keep telling me about this? Who the hell is this Jon Snow guy? I was like, oh yeah, that's my burner. That's me. So important lesson for everyone. You create a burner or an alter ego, remember your own alter ego.
All right, that's quite funny. Thank you, Zach. Thank you so much for the conversation today, for all your lessons and all your experiences that you shared.
Thanks, Gail. Pleasure, as always.